know that you've been getting a lot of these one-off videos from me, but I just have a lot of feelings and I need to let them out, and that's the whole reason I made a booktube channel. I enjoy doing single book reviews on my channel. The Thursday videos are the real videos, and then I've been putting up a lot of videos on Tuesdays that are more just kind of spur of the moment, whatever I want to talk about, and I think I'm going to end up doing quite a few single book reviews on Tuesdays. So look forward to that, I guess. Well, look forward to this one, because today we're talking about The Project by Courtney Summers. Yes, I did get the special one because I'm extra like that. This is Courtney Summers' follow-up to Sadie, which was my best book that I read last year. It was just incredible. It's hard to talk about because it's just such a viscerally emotional experience. The project is very different, but still has that something that really draws me in. Courtney Summers feels like she's writing for me, which is a really special experience. This is I just have the dust jacket here, because the first thing we have to talk about for the reason this book is so amazing is the cover. Because the dust jacket, amazing, and then you open it and there's this, and then you open it again. This book is about cults. Should I talk about what this book is about? Let's do that. This is the story about two sisters trying to find their way back to each other. One of them has joined a cult and the other one is starting to investigate the cult and trying to get in contact with her sister. I have some problems about how it feels YA, while I think it should be an adult book. The main character, Lo, in this is 19, which I think then they're like, it's technically YA, so that's cool. I think if this had been aged up to adult, then it would have given her more freedom. It still goes dark, but I feel like the writing feels YA. That being said, this book was a 5 out of 5 stars. It's so good, but I think for very personal reasons. I think there were some technical difficulties with this book, but the emotion behind it outweighed all of that. And it makes me think, like, I gave Sadie 5 stars. How many stars should Sadie be? If we were like grading on a curve, Sadie would destroy the whole thing. It's too good. So I would recommend Sadie to everyone, barring all of the triggers in it. This book, I think, is a lot more specific of an audience, and I think this one really got me because of the cult stuff. Because I grew up in a religious household, I have sort of more insight into how traditional religion works and then how that can sort of be skewed. And there's a lot of like Bible quotes in here that are sort of taken out of context, but that's what makes it so good. And you can see the real parallels between traditional religions and the slippery slope into cult stuff. My views now are pretty agnostic across the board. I fully respect religion for other people, but I'm also extremely wary of it. I tabbed it a lot. I have many thoughts. So the first thing that I loved about this was the parallels between Lo's job and the cult. So the cult leader, Lev, and her boss, Paul, have the same ideology of like, I am the one who can save you. In Lev's case, like, save your soul. And in Paul's case, it's like, I am the one who can make a career for you. You are nothing without me. He runs a newspaper or a magazine, and it's got that startup kind of feel where it's like, you have to give everything to the company and the company will ensure you success in the future. So there's a parallel here where Lev is talking to Rob, who will leave the cult. I don't think at this point he's left it, but he's saying, faith is what prepares you in the face of the unknown. Faith is what enables you to stand before it and to stay standing when others fall. God chooses what to reveal to us and when. If you are meant to know, don't you think I would have told you? Oh, just the slight twisting of that, of like, you're the bad guy for asking me to tell you, in such a subtle way. Oh, it's brilliant. But then that's paralleled by later at the office. Lo was asking Paul, what's going on? I ask. If you needed to know, you'd know. That's the same. That's the same thing of, if you were meant to know, I would have told you. But that is an expression we hear a lot more frequently. It's a much more familiar experience to get sucked into a job or a person in a position of authority over you to just kind of do whatever they want you to do, or sacrifice some of yourself for the sake of the job. And I think pairing that with the cult stuff was the smartest thing. You're always going to be worshiping something, and I don't think we think about it that way, and this book really helped you think about it that way. I also loved the way that Bea and Lo's stories did this. One started from the beginning and went to the end, and the other one went the opposite way. So Bea starts off finding Lev, joining the cult, slowly wanting to get out of it, and then, you know, he's dead. But the other way, Lo starts off being dead, and Lev brings her back to life, but then completely rejecting the cult, and then slowly coming to join it. So smart. I think this book is just so well plotted to make both of those work, and to make it so that you have pro and anti-cult tension at all points in the book. They do sort of drop the Paul plotline toward the end. I understand why they did it, but I do feel like it was a misstep because I think Paul was a really strong character. There were a couple of plot lines in here that didn't really tie themselves up super nicely, like when we start off with Arthur and Jeremy, and we never get a real answer on Jeremy other than he probably just committed suicide, which is what we knew all along, which is too bad. The other thing, I have an explanation for it, but I think the book would have been better for giving an explanation, is that at the end of the book, Lo goes to get baptized by Lev. She doesn't want to, like, she wants out. And when they come out of it, Lo is alive and Lev is dead. And they don't say how. And I don't know why they didn't. I don't know if the implication is divine intervention happened, which kind of sucks, because Lo specifically asks Foster if he thinks Bea dying was like part of God's plan, or if God killed Bea, and he just says no, which is also a bad answer, but something should have been explored there. Or the explanation is just Lo somehow overpowered Lev. I mean, that's definitely possible, but if that happened, I don't know why they wouldn't have just said it, other than like Lo doesn't want to get in trouble, and so she's also blaming divine intervention. Sure. There's also the bit about how Lev's mom dies in a fire when he goes to see her, and that is also not explained, but like he definitely did it. The bits that don't get explained in here remind me of another book that I will not name because I don't want to give spoilers for it, with an abusive husband, and there's like some creepy stuff that happens to the wife. She doesn't know if it's a delusion or if it's a stranger or if her husband is gaslighting her or whatever, and that never gets explained, which I know would bug a lot of people, but I think it was really smart because that husband was abusive, he would never admit it. If he got caught, he would just flat out deny everything all the time. So if that was a real situation, the wife would never know. And so we are reading the book from her perspective, so we are getting as much information as she is given. So I like thinking of books that way. It helps me be more lenient about how much information we're being given. But it seems weird that the climax of the book, like, it's a book about a cult, and the cult leader dying is the climax, and it doesn't get treated with enough respect. That's my one big complaint. I've been thinking about this book nonstop. I read this book in like 2.5 sittings, which I never do. Just sat and read for like 2 hours straight one night until midnight. I love sleeping. This book ruined that for me, and I love it for it. I love the way that this book made me feel and made me question myself. Does that make sense? Whenever you read a cult book, you're like, I would never stay. If that happened to me, once it escalates to a point, I would never do that. But you know that these things do happen. And so it's a fine line to ride. And I think she did well enough, and I think especially the parallels with Paul really helped explain how this could happen to you, potentially. But one of my complaints was that we didn't get to see B and Lo being sisters. I don't think ever, because even when they are together is when Lo's in the hospital and she doesn't remember B being there. And there's all this talk about how they have a bond or whatever, but I never really felt that. I felt it between Emmy and each of the sisters, and I thought that helped to tie it together a bit. But I wish we had had some flashback scenes of them actually being together. And that was a choice to not do that, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it was to follow up more on other things that Courtney Summers was more interested in, but it feels like in a book about sisters. Although, does Sadie do that? It does it a bit, yeah. There are some like flashbacks of the girls together, but they start off the book separately, which makes sense. Yeah, I think this one suffered a little bit from that. The slow progression in this was excellent. The progression from the Unity Project and the Unity Center being this place for down on their luck people and all of the good work that they're doing, and then the progression into mutilation, I guess is what you would call it, was just really good and really smart, and how now they are created in my image, which is a Bible thing, and how that can get twisted, and just excellent. There was the quote from Casey talking about the Unity Project, how she is blackmailing her dad in order to get the money to run the center. And she says, my father might not accept atonement for his sins, but that doesn't mean he can't still pay for them. If this is the result, I'm fine with that too. Which I love. Just that it's a complicated moral question. Like, do the ends justify the means, even if they're wholly unrelated? All she says is, my father is a sick man, so glean from that what you will. But I think it's so interesting. It causes you to think about like utilitarianism. Is that the route we want to go down? Like, is the suffering of the few justifying the good of the many? In that there are no easy answers to that. I mean, the book definitely paints Casey in a very poor light, but I think that it's still a really believable character, that you understand how she thinks she's doing good, even in a sort of perverted way where she is okay with some people suffering. There's this great part where they're talking about, Lev's talking about how Jeremy died, and Lo is talking about how she thinks he got brainwashed and this was his only way out. And Lev says, he loved us and we loved him. To deny his autonomy and erase his life's work, to reject his faith so that you can rewrite him as a victim of mine and the projects, for the sole purpose of validating your hatred of us and your anger at your sister, is deeply awful. That's true, because by saying that Jeremy was brainwashed and that he is only a victim, it invalidates all of the good that he did, because you can't have it both ways. He was either brainwashed and doing everything for the project, or he was autonomous and wanted to be there and fully consented to all of these good works. I love how complicated it is. I think this book is really complicated, and I think you kind of have to sit with it And I don't know if everyone's gonna have the same background that I do or the same inclinations to examine these things further. Maybe these aren't things that interest you, but these are things that really interest me. There's a bit where they talk about how Lev predicted Trump winning the 2016 election. A religious leader predicting that the election is going to bring someone bad is like a dime a dozen. But the whole thing I thought was interesting. In 2 years, a darkness will settle over our nation, brought by a man who wears no masks. He is who he claims to be. He will call for a wall built on the promise of greatness, but the foundation is rot. The first brick laid will be fear, the second ignorance, the third hate. Your neighbors are no longer your neighbors. Their masks will come off, and they will spread the darkness. They will rally in hate. Innocents will die, children will suffer. 2020 mood if I've ever heard it, but 2 references to masks I thought was also a fun, not fun time. Just, even when it's not a pandemic book, I'm gonna find a way to make it a pandemic book. And I also think that's a really poetic sum up of the Trump administration and everything. The first brick is fear, the second ignorance, the third hate. I love the way that she's able to weave stuff like that into this pretty fun time, all things considered. The other bit here is basically right at the end. B is trying to find Lo online, which parallels what Lo did in the beginning, trying to find B, and Lo like offhand mentions that she Googles herself and she can't find anything, when B does the same thing and can't find her, and they're like in the same position but neither of them realize it. And it's so poetic. Oh, so with all of that being said, I think part of the reason that this book gets a bad rap and a fairly middling rating is because I don't think it's a thriller. I think it's literary fiction with an overwhelming sense of dread over it. Even in the book, they have the classification in it, and it has cults, sisters, journalism. But nowhere in there does it say thriller. Nowhere does it even say YA. But I assume the publisher is a YA publisher. And so I think people go in expecting high action thriller, and there are definitely thriller elements to it, but I think it's much slower than that and more philosophical and a thinker. It's a thinker of a book. I'm just really happy with it, and I think that all of my favorite books have flaws in them. And that's how I know I love it, if I'm still championing it, despite all of the negative things that I've already been saying, like The Blinds by Adam Sternberg, and the ending was just like straight up no good. But I still love it so much. Or Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo has that whole Monique, I think is her name, plotline. Don't care about it at all. Still a 5 out of 5 book. So giving a book 5 stars doesn't mean that it was perfect. It means that it was perfect for you. Oh, so cheesy. But it's true. Anyway, if you have read The Project, I am dying to talk about it. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.